It's actually not all in Ethereum. It's about 80% Ethereum. There's 95% in crypto because I've also got a position in carbon, which is the only other non-crypto trade I've got.
You had a discussion with Pump and you predicted the pandemic impact and you nailed it. I'm curious to know how you see 2022 from a macro perspective.
2022 is a more complex year, so I can't assign as high a probability to it. My perspective is, in a world riddled with debt and overwhelmed by debt, if you raise prices on people, they will consume less. So my view is the opposite of everybody else's view currently. My view is that growth slows dramatically based on both the central bank balance sheet tapering and the higher prices of input costs like electricity, those kind of things, and also gasoline for cars. Those kind of things are fixed costs. And if you rise the fixed costs in people without raising wages as much, you end up with less demand. Or its potential is more borrowing. That's the only way. You either consume less or borrow more. It doesn't look like the banking system really wants to lend in that way, and household balance sheets are already, have an excessive amount of debt. So I think the balance of probabilities is a slower year, which is not what people expect. A slower year would tend to see a reduction in the rate of inflation, a reduction in bond yields, and a probable return of expansion of the central bank balance sheets, which is somewhat typical after almost every single recession. The central banks tend to wait for the economy to truly stabilize. And that process usually takes about 2 years of further rate cuts as the stimulus rolls off and then the economy comes down to a trend rate of growth, which is too low. They stimulate again, it drifts down, they stimulate again, and eventually you find the equilibrium level of the trend rate of growth, which I think is much lower than people expect.
Why do you think you are a contrarian from this perspective?
Because most people see what's in front of their eyes and not what lies into the future. So you need to look at the kind of probabilistic trees of, okay, what could happen? There are no certainties. None of us know, but where did the probabilities align themselves? Most people look with inflation up now, therefore inflation, therefore wages will go up. And and therefore the Fed needs to tighten. That's the general how the market tends to think. The macro game is all about living in the future and looking backwards at the probabilities to say, what is the most likely outcome from here? And is there opportunity to invest accordingly?
So you think that the inflation rate of like almost 7% that we've seen in the US will go down?
Correct. Either mathematically it's likely to go down. If you also just step back and say, well, what has happened to the price of oil? It's been coming off again. Copper hasn't gone up for some time. Lumber prices, well, they've come down. So what we're left with is natural gas in Europe is still very strong.
Yep.
Some of the agricultural complex is still strong because of supply issues. Those are the real issues here. I think we're already starting to see mitigation within housing prices and stuff like that, where prices again destroyed demand.
So from a selfish, let's say, crypto perspective, what should we want from 2022?
From what we want and what we get is always two different things.
Obviously.
The best backdrop to crypto would be further economic weakness and the marginal propensity for the balance sheets of the central banks to increase. That would be positive crypto and would certainly extend the cycle further than people imagine. And that's potentially on offer here, but it's far from a certainty.
I've heard you saying that 95% of your portfolio is in Ethereum. So you already explained why. And I'm curious to know, how do you see the war between the other layer one players? Because obviously
it's actually not all in Ethereum. It's about 80% Ethereum. There's 95% in crypto because I've also got a position in carbon, which is the only other non-crypto trade I've got. But The other layer ones, it's really simple to me. I don't know why everybody gets in a big mess about this. It's really simple. Is okay, so Bitcoin is the least flexible in its current format. So if you want flexibility of smart contracts and ease of use, you go to Ethereum. That's great. Now, if you want cheaper fees or faster, you go to another layer one, Solana, Terra, Avalanche, etc. And they all have their place in the ecosystem. And that's fine. And it's not, I don't think the market is all about price or speed. It's all about network effects. Those chains are getting network effects. And I think Ethereum's dominance of the alternatives market, the non-Bitcoin market, will fall over time. Because the market's going to broaden out and find different use cases. It's like I was having an argument on Twitter last night about decentralization. But it's not decentralized enough for them. Nothing is compared to Bitcoin. But people will take trade-offs. Everybody does. Life is about a trade-off. And the trade-off is less decentralized equals faster and cheaper. And that equation is what it is, and you make your choice. And that means there will be people adopting some of these ecosystems.
Do you see Ethereum flipping the Bitcoin's market cap?
Yeah, for sure.
This answer was so, as in, I would expect a yes, but it was for sure, it was like more than a yes.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, because one is the internet of value, and the other is a store of value, right? They're not the same things. The value of all of the mobile phone networks in the world is worth a lot more than gold. But nobody compares them. That's stupid. But people compare these things. Now, if in 10 years' time, Bitcoin has smart contracts, has cheap transactions, all of these things that Ethereum offers, then fine, that may change again. I don't think of it necessarily as a permanent flippening. Maybe something else happens. I have a completely open mind. But right now, if you look at the network effects and the speed of growth of the network, Ethereum will outperform. And eventually, it only has to outperform by 2x and it's done. And it's larger. Does that mean that Ethereum's won? No. They're two different things. It's ridiculous.
Curious to know your 2 cents on regulation. And you've been in the space for many years. What's crypto? Is it a commodity, a security, a currency? First, who has to answer this question? As in, who will decide what's crypto? And second, who will hold the axe in the industry to decide what is what?
So I think that this is not any of those things. It's a digital asset. And it has functions and features of everything. So we just need to walk away from the past and stop framing things or putting those square pegs in the round holes and just saying, okay, this is a digital asset. It's different. Kind of Singapore's doing that. I think the Middle East will do that. I think that will be the prevalent way. Switzerland's done a pretty good job with that too. And who's going to make that decision is actually the millennial and Gen Z population. The more that they're involved in the space, the more the politicians will have to listen to them. And what this space is trying to do is change the opportunity set for these people. They came out of university and in their 30s with the most early 30s with the most expensive real estate of all time, most expensive equity market, the most expensive bond market, the most expensive credit market. So their forward expected return on their wealth is incredibly low, the lowest of any generation in history. They also are earning less in real terms than any generation in history. They have more debt than any generation in history as a group of 30-year-olds. So here is their opportunity. you better damn not well shut them out. This is like the ability for retail to participate in early stage VC, derivative markets, all of the things that have made rich people richer. And it's here for retail. And there's a lot of voters here. And these guys are pretty pissed off in how they've been treated, particularly by the financial world. And I think that is the battle that's coming. It's the battle of the generations. It's the fourth turning.